Welcome everyone to today's webinar. As usual with these webinars, we'll give it a minute or so for people to file in. We are expecting a big crowd, not that you'll all see it, but we are expecting a big crowd today with a lot of questions and answers. So as we're getting started here and you're joining, if you do have questions, go down to the right-hand corner of the application here and click on questions, ask your question. And we have Jim Martin here to man the question booth and keep me honest and answer all your questions today. So we'll get going here in about 1 minute. Thank you for joining today. Just really quickly here. Hi, everyone. Hello again. My name is Patrick Dunphy. I'm the VP of Marketing and Alliances here at Anark. I'm joined by Jim Martin here as well, who's Director of Customer Engagement here at Anark. And we're excited about today's topic. We have a lot of really interesting things to cover. So I will get right to it in terms of what we're going to do today. But thank you all for joining. And if you've just recently joined, please use the questions panel in the lower right corner of the application so that you can ask your questions. We did have, given the large number of folks that registered, we did have a number of questions pre-submitted. So Jim will throw those in for me at the right time. Thank you, Jim. And we'll get going. Why are we doing this today? First and foremost is that this digital standard strategy from the DoW came out in January, towards the end of January. It's largely focused on their efforts to drive digital standards. So what is the strategy? What are the practices around defining digital standards within the DoW? And how do they use those across their broader ecosystem and the defense industrial base? That said, there's a whole host of takeaways that we have within the actual session, right? So within the document, we have a whole host of takeaways, analysis and key takeaways that we found. We have things to apply the strategy to industry. And really what we wanted to do is just break it down today and walk everybody through the takeaways that we have. If this were a meeting or a session where you were talking to someone who's an expert in standards in the industry, I think they'd have a different take on what this document is talking about. But given Anark's role in the industry and a lot of our customers' role across the DoW as well as private industry, we have a lot of interesting things that we pulled out of this that I think will be fun to talk through today. And then, of course, don't take our word for it. We'll go through industry examples that are leading the way, and we'll take a look at how you can get started to close it out. And again, ask those questions throughout as we get through today. All right, so let's start with the analysis. Really, the key takeaway here is there's two phrases that come up over and over again in this document, one more than other. One is machine readable or machine translatable or interpretable, and the other is human readable. So let's see how that breaks down. With machine readability, that is by far and away the most essential part of this strategy for digital standards in the DoW. And that is because a lot of content, a lot of digital engineering data is traditionally paper-based, file-based in other formats that are not machine readable. And therefore, right away, that slows the entire innovation process. So the goal here and how we did this, we looked at the document. I went through the document and we found that in a 28-page document, the word machine is referenced a total of 45 times. Machine readable, 28 times. Machine interpretable, 14 times. In guiding principle 2, which is one of the key guiding principles of the strategy, we'll come to in a couple slides here, that particular guiding principle mentions machine 15 times in 1.5 pages. So needless to say, it's very important. But really what it comes down to is this first bullet here, which is to eliminate formats that cannot be read or interpreted by machines. All right, and so that's a super important point to take away here. And then there's just this block of text in terms of how that comes into play directly from the document itself, right? The goal here is to create machine readable and machine interpretable formats that enable use in digital tools and processes. And as we'll see in the next slide, that then also enables the ability for the continued need of human readable assets. These are powered by machine readable artifacts in the way that the strategy describes it, but they start as machine readable, but now you have a 3D CAD model, for example, with all of the PMI and GD&T notations within the model. That's now the source, the authoritative source, to create derivatives that can be used by machines downstream and by humans downstream. We'll show some examples of that in a few minutes, but it all starts from a machine readable and machine interpretable format. As far as the humans are going in this document, when I first read through it, I thought maybe that people were being left behind and the machines were going to take over, and that felt like the tone of the document. However, as I read through various sections and then went back through it again, if you look at the right-hand side here, it's really the summary statement of this one important section in the document within Principle 2, we'll come to on the next slide. And it's all about how human readable is a continued need, but there's a need to make that connected and portable so that you can go from a lack of user access to ecosystem-wide access of digital tools, right? Today, there's a lack of access and a lack of balanced access across the entire ecosystem. That can be balanced out with connected and portable. Then you have this notion of consumable artifacts. These consumable artifacts, if you think about DoD 5097 and the artifacts listed within that instruction on digital engineering, you go from a lack of digital ready skills with people that are consuming this information to digital proficiency. There's an element of training that goes along with that as well, but in order to consume that and make it so that the people can do that, it has to be easy. So that data, the new digital data and standards for digital data, means that that information needs to be easily consumed by everyone downstream. Back to connected and portable, there's a need for digital transformation, but the transition period to go from where this document says the industry is today to where it would like to be, it's a long transition period. And so connected and portable, having a balance of both, needs to continue on so that that human readable format can help bridge the gap between today and tomorrow. And then last but certainly not least, there's this idea behind new connected product experiences where you take document-based standards of today that really need to evolve. And in some cases, as mentioned in this strategy, the standards that exist today won't be appropriate to carry forward, and brand new standards will have to be defined for the digital future that this strategy lays out. And with that, we'll bring new connected product experiences that downstream users can consume in human readable formats. All right, continuing on our rapid tour of the 30 some odd page document. The guiding principles, key takeaways from this section of the document. Principle 1 really focuses in on the digital standards that are required, and that these digital standards of the future, going from today's often paper-based or physical world standards in the mil standard and mil spec category, the same rigor that's been applied to those standards for decades needs to carry forward for digital. Just because it's digital doesn't mean it's easy and there's no standard necessary. That same type of rigor needs to be carried forward. For the second principle, this is where you have the merger or the coming together of machine readable product data and human readable product experiences. And if you can mesh those together so that you get out of the way of Excel-based inspection plans for quality or Excel-based manufacturing process plans, 2D drawings that are recreated instead of derived from the 3D model as model-based views, or any other downstream artifact that's recreated as a separate disconnected asset. That's the idea behind Principle 2, is publishing digital standards in relevant formats that remains connected to that authoritative source. And then principle 3 is all about avoiding vendor lock-in, ensuring access, and minimizing training by driving standards across an expert community. So bringing together the experts, and I'm sure there are people on this call, people that we know, people that I know, that are experts in the community that are part of standards driving organizations, some of which we'll mention later in this session today. Those folks have to come together to really drive this forward so that digital standards rule the day in the future world that we're moving towards. Great. And then how are they going to do it? So 5 lines of effort to run this program. This is the programmatic approach to what's outlined in the strategy. And there's a couple of these, 1 and 5, really, that are focused on organizational change management around collaboration and coordination of teams and standards. And then in 5, workforce development being central to the digital transition, bringing the entire organization and ecosystem forward. But then you have areas of 2 and 3, which are really interesting. And these are the areas that we're going to focus in on today around human readable and machine readable data, digitalization that accelerates innovation, as well as machine interpretable data, easy for me to say, that enables model and data portability. So how do you get the data from one place to another, from one machine to another, and importantly, to the people that need to do the work, check the work, and make sure everything was done correctly. And then establishing the ecosystem is really their approach to driving digitally managed standards. So think of it as PLM for digital standards management, and being able to manage the life cycle of standards in an organized, change management centric kind of way. Great. So I'm going to pause here. Jim, did we have any questions? I know this was focused on the strategy document itself so far, but now I'm going to turn the corner into how we can do some of these things, applying it to the industry. Any questions so far in the queue, or any that we got offline before the event?
Yeah, Patrick, there was one question about getting a copy of the presentation. We'll definitely get that to everybody. One of the questions that came in from John ahead of time was the DoD and capabilities from tools to handle drawings, which is a loaded question because drawings can mean a lot of things to a lot of different people, but I think we were assuming maybe legacy drawings, 2D drawings, something that's needed to be digitized and modernized and brought into the modern technical data package. Want to talk about that one first, Patrick?
Yeah, for sure. So, thinking about, let me go, well, really it comes down to principle 2, right? So we're talking about formats. We're talking about drawings versus 3D versus other. And so that comes down to principle 2. And within principle 2, if you go through and read it, and really connecting back into this connection point for human readable remains super important as outlined in the document, right, in this strategy. So drawings aren't going anywhere if there isn't anything to replace it. The goal, however, in principle 2 is over time to transition away from drawings and go drawingless. Not that a 2D representation in a model view within a 3D model as an authoritative 3D model, that doesn't necessarily go away, but the creation of a separate drawing that's disconnected from that authoritative model absolutely does. And so if you look through the strategy, that's really how they're attacking this. It's not, okay, hard line in the sand, let's cut it all off and we can't use drawings anymore. Those are here to stay. There's so many of them across all of our customers here at Anark, as well as across the entire manufacturing industry. So you can't just go away from it. You have to be able to merge it and transition away into a digital future. So in terms of our software, we support both because we know there's the legacy systems and the legacy content, and then there's the future of digital connected product experiences. Any other questions, Jim?
Yeah, just one additional comment on that. We were involved in the MBE Maturity Index workshop that occurred 2 days ago, which has quite a few of the DoW folks. And again, a lot of that conversation comes down to what is your MBE maturity level. Sometimes the maturity level is not there yet, but we can support it, as Patrick pointed out. So that, and then another question that came before the webinar started was Stephen asked, what does Anark support as far as providing data externally to DoW customers to consume? So how do you get information from a aerospace and defense OEM to the customer on the DoW side?
Got it. Yeah, so we'll definitely come to that in a slide coming up. But the good news is there are additional modes of delivery that cover that particular topic. The traditional, most well-known format, of course, is portable 3D PDF TDPs. But then, we can go into some additional things as we come to that slide in a few minutes. But I don't know if you have a different thought on that, Jim, but that would be my go-to on that one.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. That's the way we would think about it. Yeah. And then
Great.
one other question that just came up, it's more of a statement than a question. John said the source for human interpretable and computer interpretable data should be the same. The only difference is how it is presented. And I think we are in violent agreement as far as that's concerned.
Absolutely. I will go back to it one more time. Right. Machine readable product data drives digital tools and processes and doesn't always necessarily require a human in the loop. You can transfer the data and run a machine off of machine readable data. But when it is human readable, principle 2 absolutely, as John said, describes it as product experiences that are sourced from the machine readable data. So it's the same source, right? Whether whatever part of the MBSE spectrum, I'll show a slide on that later in terms of all the different data types. Wherever you are in that spectrum of data, it has to be from an authoritative source that's machine readable in nature, or at least machine interpretable, as spec'd in the strategy document. Okay, great. So applying the strategy to industry, why are we here today, and why is this one of the most attended webinars that we've hosted in a while? Well, I believe, and we believe at Anark, and talking to our customers and folks in the industry, it's because market forces have compressed the timelines for everyone. The phrase time to market is probably not aggressive enough for what manufacturers are feeling in terms of the pressure to speed up innovation, right? And if you can figure that out in the digital world, innovation speed becomes the competitive advantage. So competition forces force faster cycle times, demand from customers, especially in the aerospace and defense industry right now, are absolutely demanding faster cycle times. And then the supply chain dynamics can either be a slowing mechanism or an accelerator, depending on how you can work with a diverse supply network. And so that's really the motivation behind doing this webinar today, is we've heard this from everyone that we talk to. But there's a catch to doing that. And the catch is that innovation starts with engineering, but it doesn't end there. So if this were just engineering organizations creating digital models that are machine readable and the data never had to go anywhere else, I think we're down a pretty decent path. There's still work there to be done. I know many people who would say that, and the people that we work with, but a lot of it is done, and people are trying to put these practices in place within engineering organizations. The challenge is that when it doesn't end there, you have to get that data to everyone else. And that means you need to harness the full power of all that product engineering data to bring it downstream as machine readable, machine interpretable, and human consumable. And so that means you need to empower everyone with the highest quality, most accurate, best representation that's originally sourced from the authoritative source, just as John's comment mentioned. Right, so everything has to come from that authoritative source and be highly accurate based on it. And then you can start to accelerate innovation by connecting all of the machines and people to the digital thread of that information. But the reality of it is, it looks like this today. And for those of you who have bumped into me at an event recently or talked to me in the last year or so, I've been talking about this for a while, which is the model-based collaboration gap, where you have all this great innovation happening in engineering in the blue building on the left, and then you have everyone else on the right who's trying to get access to that information. And the model-based collaboration gap is the gap in between that breaks the digital thread. And so you can have these excellent digital engineering strategies focused on authoritative models and interoperability. But if you assume that collaboration is just going to take care of itself, you in essence find the inevitable situation that is all of the blocks in between these two buildings start to occur and pile up. And the result is delays, rework, and risk, right? And so that's a big problem. It's a real problem. And it's a problem that we're looking at with our partners, with our customers, and with others in the industry at how we can solve that. And this is how that looks. This is how solving this looks. We've started to put together an approach very closely tied to the strategy that's just been released on digital standards, as well as DoD 5097 on digital engineering, the CUI DoD instruction on controlled unclassified information, and all of the other pieces that fit into the puzzle of different standards that are out there and different instructions and different strategies. All of these guidelines all converge on one thing that we've come back to, which is there's been a missing layer in the digital engineering stack. The authoritative systems have been there. They define and manage the data so that people can design, manage, and change innovation, right? There's derivatives and standards organizations to drive those derivatives and deliver the ability to exchange and visualize the data. But when it comes to the human consumable or human readable data that is derived directly from that authoritative source, that's been traditionally a gap, and one that we're looking very closely at Anark. And so this enables everyone in the everyone else building, that yellow building on the left, on the right in the last slide, to access, explore, and understand the data with connected product data experiences, with portable technical data packages in the form of 3D PDF, portable digital data packages in the form of HTML, standalone, self-contained packages. And everyone has all this information that's tied to an integrated backup stream with the authoritative source, or multiple authoritative sources, as the strategy outlines. But then you have to be able to close the loop with feedback, decisions, and lifecycle traceability. And if you can do that, you are able to close that gap between the two buildings by making machine readable product data consumable across the enterprise. So let's just take a quick look at the three modes of distribution in this box on the right-hand side. In order to democratize access to the digital engineering data, you need different modes. And it's written in the strategy document that we're talking about today. It's written in other places as well. It's at the heart of the question that Jim mentioned a few minutes ago on drawings and having legacy data, is that you need different distribution methods for different situations. It would be great if everything was a fully connected digital world right now, but the truth of the matter is that portable distribution is absolutely required to bring data into situations where there isn't a connection is not allowed, or there's just no way to get the data there without having a standalone piece of information that's potentially even printable, right? Connected distribution has all of those connected product data experiences that we can talk about in terms of work instructions or cross-domain reviews, all of the feedback that closes the loop. But portable distribution is also very much here to stay until we hit a day where we're 100% digital across every situation, which I think is a pretty far way off. All right, Jim, before we get into the next section, any other questions or comments that you wanted to bring in?
Yes, Haresh asked, is this strategy focused only on the design side or manufacturing also?
Great question. So in the industry examples leading the way, I'll show the spectrum as I referred to it. This is across all parts of the MBSE spectrum, right? So think about engineering, the design side, of course, manufacturing, quality, out to sustainment. Everybody's included in this. And if you read through the strategy, that's the importance of machine readable data. So if I go back a couple slides or go back one slide and we look at QIF, for example, in the derivative section, QIF is, the QIF plan can go out and help with quality inspection planning. And then you actually read the results of the quality inspection plan off of, CMM, for example, measurement machines to bring that data back into the authoritative source of truth. At least that's the goal, right? And so that's an example of starting in engineering, moving out to manufacturing, into quality, and bringing it back into the engineering as feedback for future requirements, future improvements, et cetera. So it absolutely covers the entire spectrum. And that's why this is listed as connected product data experiences here, and why engineering, manufacturing, quality, procurement, sustainment, suppliers, partners, customer stakeholders, all of those individuals participate in the future and in today's world. And so you have to be able to bring all of those people forward into the digital strategy that's outlined in the document that we're talking about today. Anything else there, Jim, or shall I move on?
Yep, go ahead and move on.
All right, great. Hopefully everyone's enjoying this as much as I do. If that's not apparent, well, I guess you don't know me very well, but this is some interesting stuff. Now we get to the fun part, because I talk about everything that we're seeing and we're thinking and how we interpreted the document that we're talking about today. But now I'm going to take you through a number of industry examples that highlight what's happening in industry that's related directly to this strategy. One, of course, that we can't avoid talking about is DoD 5097 on digital engineering. This instruction guidance document that was put out by the DoD towards the end of 2023 was a very, very important document at the time in terms of tying together a number of concepts around digital twin, digital thread, digital engineering ecosystems, digital artifacts, and digital models, all of which this entire screenshot or this entire page here on the right side of this slide, this is actually in the new DoW digital standard strategy document as well. But what was there at the time in terms of digital thread, digital artifact, and digital engineering ecosystems was a lot of ideas and guidance, but not a lot of practical application. And so a couple of years ago, we had a prior webinar that could be the precursor to today's webinar, for example, where we talked through a concept around all of the details that need to go into that digital engineering ecosystem. And so what we saw in the coming months and the past couple of years is, regardless of whether you're using Anark software or not, there is a strategy that involves content management, right? All these blocks: content management, communication, unified communication, collaboration, work management, knowledge management, all wrapped in a dark blue ring here. That's really the IT infrastructure for extensibility, integration to the authoritative sources and other systems, and highly secure system, right? Fully automated as well, right? Another blue ring word here. So all of this came together around 5097, and just key words that came out of the 5097 document were collaborative digital environments, driving collaboration across all those different personas that we showed, all those different user types that we showed on the slide with all the people, and integrated digital thread, feedback mechanism, the closed loop feedback, right? All of this has been around from this standard for, well, it's been since 2018 when the original digital engineering document came out and strategy came out. And that's also listed in the document we're talking about today. But in 2023, it's been 2+ years now where people have been coming up with ideas on how to do this. One notable company who's done this in a very interesting way is Lockheed Martin. So if you're not familiar with it, the slides will be distributed. The link to all of these sources and all this content that I'm referencing today are at the bottom of most of the slides that you'll see. And this is Lockheed Martin's model-based enterprise playbook for working with their supply chain. And a lot of interesting things and parallels happened between 5097 and Lockheed Martin's model-based enterprise playbook by design, right? Because that's the direction that the industry is headed. And so you have all of these things coming together, and you have the ability to create a portal, or in a lot of companies that we talk to, they're talking about an integrated hub. So in Lockheed's terms, it's the External Integration Hub, or EIH. And they also have the integrated design environment, which is essentially their digital engineering ecosystem. And they're using tools like Anark, Collaborate, to bring the human readable representation of authoritative sourced engineering data to everyone else in the yellow building, right? Especially customers and especially suppliers in this case. But that's a key element of how you can deliver this digital engineering ecosystem mentioned in 5097. And then you have the US Air Force. Their digital material management is really interesting and came out similar time frame. I'm sure you could start a good debate as to which came first, which idea started first, but both very closely related and really important thoughts around how to deliver integrated, innovative, and trusted capability throughout the acquisition lifecycle. All of these things are trying to bring the same thing together. Another industry example, Anark was at an event 2 weeks ago now, about 2 weeks ago. And I saw this presentation at the event, and Stephanie Locks-Hartle put on a presentation about persistent IDs and driving digital manufacturing with persistent IDs, basically bringing a standards-driven approach to mapping the data that is, well, it's a data lake. It's a huge amount of data coming from engineering and manufacturing and quality and others. And so being able to have a Rosetta Stone for all of this machine readable data is essential, because when it comes time to check, have human in the loop and have human readability of that data, you need a way to understand what's happening and what are the connections. So these persistent IDs link product definition from the engineering data to the manufacturing data to the quality data, so that you have a way to trace across the domains and provide cross-domain review, provide cross-domain machine readability, and really have a way to drive advanced analytics and AI-driven workflows. Really interesting stuff happening here. Another example here in a moment, but yes, I think the key here is how do we plug the humans into this so that we can deliver human consumable data at scale. All right, one other example, very closely related to the last slide, is the digital data package and Cascara. These are two groups. One is the digital data package. This is a technology component that's part of the Cascara organization that's driving this standardized collaboration data model and ontology that you see on the right-hand side of the slide mentioned. And the goal here is to deliver a standards-based approach to connecting product data across the lifecycle, an open standard, no less, right? So being able to define that ontology and how the data is connected, similar to the persistent IDs concept, where you can now map across, and this gets back to the question that was asked about, is this just engineering or is this just design? Well, no, it's certainly not. If you look on the left-hand side of this slide, there's obviously a whole host of data types that cover the network of model-based systems engineering across the entire product lifecycle. And the goal of the Cascara project is to map that, have a common data model and ontology that's an open standard that allows you to create human consumable and machine readable exchanges across the various authoritative systems, right? Ultimately, each of the different color kind of BOM boxes, right, from the light teal to the brown to the darker blue, green, and then the middle blue all the way on the end, those could be all different authoritative sources of various data throughout the product lifecycle. You have to find a way to bring all of those things together. Anark's role in this is we're providing technology in our platform to model out how the data would be delivered as human consumable product data experiences, piggybacking off of this open standard to map the connection between all of the data. So we're working with our partner, Engineering Methods out of Europe, part of the DDP working group, which is developing the DDP technology or digital data package technology. And then there are other technology components to Cascara that build out the full open standard. I think SysML2, I believe, is another one of those. Great. All right. And then last but not least, on the industry examples of how this is going and people that are actually starting to do this in practice is a CUI case study. This is an anonymized case study that is someone that we know very well. We've worked with them closely for a good long time. And they had a challenge, and others in the industry have challenge where they have many, many different types of markings that are required for controlled unclassified information. Suffice to say, if you figure out how to nail down the machine readable data and get it from the authoritative system to derive human readable content and human readable product experiences, if you're not applying the correct markings and remaining compliant in terms of how this data is shared and exchanged with others, then there's going to be real problems. So security is paramount when dealing with the digital future and the digital of today. And so that's why this project unfolded. And really what it resulted in is a fantastic application that allows for scalable and secure results across all of these different combinations of various programs, various CUI rules, and eliminating the manual marking risk that goes along with that. So defining it based off of human-based rules, but not requiring somebody to fat finger every time you need to apply a marking to a document, which is unscalable, right? And so in the middle here, you have metadata-driven watermarking processes that drive the whole thing. And so we've come up with an approach to do this, which we think is particularly interesting. And again, all the links to everything that we're talking about today in terms of industry practices that are happening out there are at the bottom of these slides. Great. Another break in the action, Jim, or at least me talking a lot. Any other questions that have come up or thoughts from the audience or thoughts from you?
Yeah, one of the Gary mentioned, he said, I've noticed a lot of issues with OEMs not including semantic references in their CAD. Is this included as a requirement as measured in Y14 to enable machine readability? So I think it's kind of a two-part thing. I think the CAD systems have enabled this capability recently, and if you at the 3D CIC event and at the upcoming MBE QIF Summit, many of the conversations are about how this information is now fully available within the CAD systems, where 3 or 4 years ago it was just starting to get fleshed out. And in addition, that information's there, and then the standards are following suit now. as far as enabling semantic information to be available. So I think that the PLM and CAD vendors have caught up to where the customers want to be. And then from there, it's going to work its way backwards to the OEMs to be able to implement solutions to deliver data in a way that's needed.
Yep, agreed. And in terms of the part of the question that I keyed in on is it a requirement? So if I think about the strategy, the digital standard strategy document, there are no hard and fast requirements in the digital standard strategy document. What the organization is more looking towards is how do they define those digital standards that would require the semantic references in the CAD as a requirement for deliverables delivered from the OEM to the DoW, right? So that I think is the key thing here. And maybe the standards today can be, and this is part of, which one was it? Kind of come back to this. It was one of the principles. It was principle 1, right? Principle 2. Yeah. So back in these principles, right, the key is to make sure that the same rigor is applied today. So maybe the existing standards for today are something that can be carried forward, or maybe it's something that has to be created new, right? And it's just not going to fit into the existing standards. In fact, I think that was in this one as well. Okay, great. All right. So let's bring a little bit of reality to this and show a quick real example where we can walk through a live example really quickly. And then that should kind of tie everything together in terms of what we wanted to show today. So let's put some people into the mix, real people. Okay, they're not real people. They're AI generated apparitions that represent real people. Real people that could be in engineering, in manufacturing, in quality, and procurement along the top, right? So 4 different roles up along the top. Down below, for the example, we only had a supplier participate, but you could also have a customer, and you could fill in other boxes for other external individuals and stakeholders that are participating in any of this. And Jim, you let me know and make sure that my page is sharing fully. Are you now seeing the browser?
Seeing the browser now. Yep.
Okay, great. So let's just make sure that all is well and good and I'm still logged in. Okay, so again, I'm currently logged in as the authoritative source owner and have access to all of this information. And if I go into this, what I really wanted to show is just the cross-domain review or cross-domain collaboration aspect of what we're talking about today. There's many, many different connected product data experiences that you could develop in our platform, and work instructions being another. But this is just one example where you have cross-domain review. So you have people from engineering, people from manufacturing, people from quality, people from procurement, and people from the supplier in this particular story that all come together in the same place and are able to mark up the content and add information to this. Let me move this. I have 2 monitors, so I actually have to move this around so I can see it, right? And we can talk about the positional tolerance on the bore as the manufacturing engineer and provide feedback and talk about whether or not this will work with anodizing or not. And do we have to go somewhere else, do something else? How do we do this, right? And then you have Carl, who is in quality, who has some concerns around the inspection plan. And again, I'll just bring this so that I can see what Carl was saying and talking about the datum target that's referenced, doesn't see anything for a clear inspection setup. So you have all these different roles. And we were in a meeting with a customer of ours this week, and they talked about seven different documents that they would have to review that essentially are all of these different conversations happening in the same place between, for example, the procurement person, who then added in the supplier, Sam, and is now having a conversation with Sam in the same context as the conversation with manufacturing and the product owner or the engineering team lead, and they're all together in one place, having 7 disconnected documents worth of conversations in one conversation in the context of the model in question that is machine readable, that can then be used to generate human consumable or human readable connected product data experiences. And so that's really the key elements here that we wanted to highlight today, is that you bring all of these individuals together, and regardless of the connected product data experience that you deliver to them, as long as it is tied to the authoritative sources and you can feed back the decisions and full lifecycle traceability in a closed loop fashion, you now have the ability to be ready for everything that's coming through the DoW standard, digital standard strategy, instruction 5097 on digital engineering. We talked about the CUI instruction as well, and everything in between. And so we don't have time for a full-blown demonstration today of how this could look and what different types of connected product data experiences exist. But I did want to quickly showcase that so that we can give you an idea of what that looks like. So I know this is a whirlwind tour. Before I tell you who you can talk to learn more about this, I just wanted to mention that we do have additional webinars coming up. We have in-person events. We have the blogs out on our website. So a lot of good information here. Follow the link, follow us on LinkedIn, and stay connected with everything that we're doing. But if you did see something here that you had more questions, and I'll answer more questions here before we go, Jim. But if you had anything else that you wanted to talk about, please use this tinyurl.com, meet Anark Jim Martin. That is actually a meeting link for Jim, who's on the call today with me. You can talk to him, talk to us, and we'll happily talk about this because it's a really interesting time to be part of the industry that we're part of. And we're glad that you're all here with us to enjoy the ride. Jim, any other questions that have come in before we wrap up for today?
Yeah, just for this link, again, just reach out to me. You can schedule some time. I will triage it. I might be able to answer the question immediately or get the right people for some additional conversations. So definitely reach out. Charlie asked, shouldn't we consider to just make the data set AI readable, as AI is coming soon to take over a lot of space of engineering analysis?
Yeah, interesting. So I'll just make one comment on that. And then, Charlie, I would love to talk to you more about this because you're likely thinking about this in the right way, I would imagine. XML is highlighted as a format for documentation in the in the digital standard strategy document that we're talking about today. So I think XML is one aspect of it, but really all of the, SysML, XML, HTML, all of those formats have an opportunity to be LLM ready to be read. And we definitely have a whole host of ideas on AI in general, in terms of how you bring the human consumable, those product data experiences, how you bring the feedback directly in with insights from AI as well. So a lot to discuss there, but in short, yes, AI and ML, machine learning, are both in the strategy document. And so I would encourage you to check it out and we can talk more about it in the future. But yes is the short answer. All right. Is that all we have for today, Jim?
We got one more.
Oh, fantastic.
When exchanging SysML models and diagrams, how is that being done or proposed given the poor adaptation of XML and SysML v2 with so basically it's kind of an overview a question saying the adoption of these standards that should enable this type of automated exchange of information is not really there yet, and how are we handling it? And I think that's kind of going a little back to DDP and Cascara.
Yeah, you read my mind. Yep, it's exactly the slide that I was going back to. So the thought that I have around that is this is really what this strategy document is all about. It's all about the path forward on, while also admitting to the fact that if you look at all the dotted lines between the various authoritative sources on this slide on the left-hand side, we're not there yet, right? And so the way that models and SysML before that was machine readable so that it could be derived and delivered as a human consumable or human readable format, it's screenshots or export to static file, right? File-based, document-based. And it was a document-based and file-based approach. And for a lot of organizations, it still is. And that's really at the heart of this document that's just been released, the digital standard strategy. The goal is to put standards in place that define how that should be done on a digital basis to move away from the need for a document-centric approach. What I will say is related to that is this approach. The missing layer in digital engineering, being able to make that data consumable based off of the authoritative source is the key, right? That's the bridge that gets us there. It's the ability to derive that information directly from the authoritative source and make that as a connected human readable asset rather than a disconnected static document that travels, has its own set of markups, and eventually is one of the 7 documents that I was talking about earlier that someone has to pull together, figure out if it's all correct, agreeing or not, and maybe even just sometimes never see it. And so that's between this slide here and what's happening with the DDP working group and Cascara project. There's some very interesting things happening that can really bridge the gap between today and tomorrow.
That's all I had.
All right. Fantastic. Well, thanks everyone for joining today. Really appreciate your time and your attention on this important subject. And again, if you have anything that you'd like to learn more about, reach out to Jim, schedule a meeting, and we'd love to talk. Until next time.
Oh, one more thing.
Oh, yes.
Let's just remind everybody, since quite a few of the people on this call are involved in the DoW community, we'll be at Defense Manufacturing a week from Monday in Orlando, and we are in, oh, there it is. We are going to be at table or booth 808. But yeah, we'll send out some notices about that. And then the MBA and QF Summit covers many of these topics. And then we roll into the PTC User Global Summit at the end of the month.
Absolutely. We're keeping busy here at Anark. I hope you all are too. I'm sure you are. All right. Until next time, thanks everybody. Thanks, Jim. I appreciate it. And we'll talk again soon.